that we can, you can review them, our live sessions, in case you do have to miss. I will, the last thing I want to say was, so if you can introduce yourselves, just let me know why you chose counseling and what your current employment is. Anybody want to just jump in and go first?
I'll go first.
Thank you.
Hello, so my name is Viviana Galicia. Currently, I am a fourth grade teacher in LAUSD. And I chose counseling because I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but being in high school, working with my high school counselor, I knew that eventually I would want to transition to that. So I think working with my counselor and seeing the difference she made in my life, I want to do that too.
Mhm. Great. Excellent. Glad you had a wonderful experience. Who'd like to jump in next?
I can go.
Thank you,
My name is
Destiny.
Destiny. I'm a leadership teacher at a middle school, and I want to be a school counselor because I believe every student deserves someone that they can trust and rely on in important years of their life.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I'll
I'll
go
go
Anybody
next.
else?
next.
Okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, thanks, Angela. Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm a substitute teacher, also coach of varsity basketball team, and then I'm in the Navy Reserve. The reason I chose school counseling is mainly because I enjoy working at a school, but I also wanted to get outside of the classroom. So I wanted to transition from classroom to more of a admin side, I guess you could say, or just one-on-one side of how counseling is. So that's pretty much my story.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm currently a middle school teacher. I teach language arts. And I chose to transition into counseling because I found that that was the part of my job that I enjoyed the most was
Hmm.
working with students and building those connections, helping them through their issues, which I got to see a lot as a language arts teacher because they wrote about everything. So that really
Yes.
showed me that I wanted to kind of pursue that part of the career instead of teaching language arts.
Thank you, Angela. We had a similar path. I was a third and fourth grade teacher, and that's when I decided I wanted to go into counseling. Would like to go next?
I can go. I'm Isabella. People usually just call me Bella. I currently work at a group home for troubled youth,
Okay.
and I want to do school counseling. I just think that school counselors can really set the scene for like the school climate, and I think that they can enact the most change within the students' lives, and that's, kind of just the reason why I wanted to do school counseling.
Thank you. So, those of you who joined just a few minutes ago, we are talking about why you chose to be a school counselor and your current employment.
I can go. My name's Brooke. I'm currently a stay-at-home mom to my almost 2-year-old, and I wanted to be a school counselor. I want to be a voice for students and support them with emotional, academic, and their personal growth.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke.
Hi, my name is Mary Kirkpatrick, and I worked in the elementary school before COVID. Then I worked in the middle school after COVID, and now I'm on a high school level. And I really have seen such a need for supporting students in the counseling area. And
Yes,
so I just can't believe the difficulties and struggles that these kids are having right now. So I'm excited to
exactly.
be in this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi, my name is Joseph. I go by Joey. I'm a substitute teacher and a stay-home dad. I decided to go into school counseling because I enjoy working with students. I don't prefer the classroom, so hence the school counseling.
Excellent. Thank you, Joseph.
Hi, my name is Christina, and I'm currently a fifth grade teacher in San Francisco. I've been teaching for probably 20 years and just feels like a very natural transition for me. I feel like I do all kinds of counseling in the classroom and then
Hmm.
just helping students to see their potential.
Hmm.
Um, and and echoing so much of what everybody's already said, helping them wrestle through difficulties in life and have a positive sounding board, somebody who can uplift them and help them see the positive things in life.
Thank you, Christina.
Hi, I'm Denise Q.
Go ahead, Denise.
Oh, thanks. I teach chemistry at a high school in Rancho Cucamonga, and I'm also the 504 advisor. This is my third year doing that, and it's really through my work with the 504s that I came to be interested in school counseling, and also I'm just ready for a change from teaching. So,
Excellent. Thank you. I think you were going to go, Richard. Are you going to go, or are you already gone?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Rich Gates. I'm currently a substitute teacher in Los Alamitos, and also a CBD educator for a local CBD company. And my wife has been a teacher since I've known her, and like managed young kids in past jobs. The development process, especially helping like older teens and young adults kind of figure their way through what they want to do in their early adulthood, really is kind of what drew me on a counselor and to begin with.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Claudia, you were going to go next?
Yes, thank you. Claudia Rouse. Happy New Year to everyone. Well, sorry, Claudia Rouse. I work for the Antelope Valley High School District. I'm currently a bilingual secretary, so I work with the EL department. So pretty much going into this job and getting involved with everything, unfortunately, well, actually not unfortunately, sorry, I'm nervous. Um, just open up the option and the opportunity, looking at students, overlooking students. The main thing that also, just like a lot of them said, is helping students. And I see that there's a big need for that. And
Yes.
me also being a EL student or back in the day, ESL,
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that. So that's why I decided to open up and take this route.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Ashley Allen, and I am currently a seventh grade history teacher in Antioch, located in the Bay Area. And last year, my principal had me to teach a college and careers course, which I fell in love with. And that kind of led me to this path of being a school counselor. I'm kind of like a counselor in my classroom anyway. So I'm ready for a different, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just ready for change, basically. Like I think Denise said, just ready to get out of the classroom and then help other students, help these students in, different capacity in their future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Destiny, did you go already?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Oh,
I'll go next.
Leah. Okay, go Maria and then Leah. Leah, we're just stating why we want to be in counseling and our current job. She might not be able to hear us. Go ahead, Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria. I currently work as a substitute teacher for the Desert Sands District. And the reason that I want to pursue counseling is because as I go to different schools, I'm exposed to the different issues that students are encountering, and I want to help them. I see that it's definitely an area of need, and I relate to a lot of the stuff that these students are going through. So I would like to be a voice for them.
Excellent. Thank you, Maria. Walter, did you already go?
No, not yet. So, name is Walter Fletcher. I am a walk-on head football coach at a high school. Just finished up my 25th year coaching. The first 11 years that I coached was at the college level. Last 13 was high school level. When I stopped college, I went back to get my MBA in athletic administration, hoping to kind of get an athletic director position. Was planning to go back to college, which kind of didn't materialize. but figured that I don't have a credential, so it's pretty much impossible to work in a school setting outside kind of extracurricular roles. I don't like any individual subject enough to teach it full time. I think
Okay.
counseling and coaching kind of goes more along the lines. I'm already kind of having those one-on-one relationships with my players and kind of working with that. And so again, just kind of trying to transition into a role that I think I'd be good at.
And go ahead and get that admin, Walter, right after, okay? It's 1 year. Go ahead and do it. Yeah, because then you can just kind of go up from there. So that'll be great. Leah.
Okay, so sorry I was late. Walter
Okay.
was so great and texted me. I was watching the news and totally spaced it. For some reason, I was like, oh no, let me go jump on. So what are we saying?
Just why you chose school counseling and where you currently work.
Okay, I don't work right now. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
But I have my bachelor's degree in marriage and family studies. And
Okay.
so I wanted to go into kind of marriage and family therapy, but decided since my husband is a school teacher and my kids are going to be in school for at least the next 10 years, I'd go the counseling route so we'd have the same schedule and kind of do that. And I love working with kids. My background, I worked with the CASA program. Um, for a long time, and I worked with kids in really difficult situations, and it really tugged on my heartstrings. And so I wanted to move and work with kids. And so that's why I went in school counseling.
All right. So do both. All
Yeah.
right. Keep your MFT and then add your hours and then add this part to it.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
you'll
the
be
plan. Like I'm going to
unstoppable.
do scout. I still want to go and get the MFT all the way and do that too. So that's
Yeah, you'll be
in the
unstoppable.
future.
Hmm. Um, so I love giving career advice, as you can see. So I know the field very well, and I'm always telling you how to make yourself look different out there because everybody has a counseling degree. So you've got to set yourself apart as you go and start applying for these different positions. So you'll need more things besides because people are coming in with doctorates and all of these things. So it's important to have more than just the counseling degree. So if you kind of have started in one route, keep going, don't stop. Like I was saying with Walter, admin is super important. So I have my admin credential as well. And so you just want to go in so that you can move up real fast. That sets you apart. And they give you those admin roles really fast. Also, the MFT, most of the jobs now say MFT slash school counselor because now you cannot hold a dual role, and we'll be talking about that as a in our program today in our course. So they have to employ you as one thing or the other, but the fact that you have both sets you apart from all the other candidates as you're going in and applying for these different positions. And there are tons of positions out there. Um, the year that I have my 30th year is the year that we'll have my district has an enormous amount of people retiring. So you'll see a lot of people moving out, and there's lots of room for new counselors to come in. They also are adding counselors to all of the roles. So we've had the opportunity to have part-time counselors, um, at the elementary level. So instead of it just being the lone wolf, where it has been for the longest, we now have two counselors at middle school, and then we have three at our high school. And our high school is very small because it's a independent charter. I mean, a dependent charter. And so we don't have that many students, but we do still have three counselors. So there is a strong need for all of those counselors there. And then our middle schools are shrinking, like all enrollment is going down. But two counselors is that this is the first time in 3 years that we've had two counselors at those sites as well, full-time counselors. Hawthorne School District is one of those unique school districts where the counselors have a separate pay scale other than teachers. So I know that there's a few other districts around that have that as well, but it's not always common. And we are seen as a teacher, so we have our union to support us as well. You'll see that if you, in some districts, you're an admin, so you don't have that union support. So that's Long Beach, that's a couple of other ones in Southern California. that I can mention. So you want to look at those things as you are moving along. And if you're up in years, you want to look at your, 16 years. They're only going to give you 16 years. So you got to make sure you're moving to a different salary scale so you can really make your money. I don't believe in working for free. All right. Welcome to Legal and Ethical Issues. Today, I'm going to go over, I have our welcome video. How many of you guys, just by show of hands, how many of you guys have already had an opportunity to watch the welcome video? Oh, great. All right. So I'm going to go through our assignments really fast because all of that is in detail on the welcome video, just in case you have a couple of questions. And so our first assignment is our professionalism. You're going to read the 3 documents from ASCA on ethical tips, ASCA ethical standards for counselors, and the role for school counselors. And then you're going to respond to those questions in a written narrative format. You're going to use APA format, even though it's a narrative, right? So just download the template. The template is it's under the writing section on your Canvas. So just make sure you use that template every single time and you won't get docked for your any points for the APA format. All right. What does professionalism mean to you? What ethical challenge will you face as a school counselor? The impact of at least one idea from Dr. Stone's video that it was significant for you as a future counselor. And cyberspace and ethics. Do you have a social media page? I know that's kind of old. People say Facebook, and that's kind of old right now. So just social media in general. And what does it say about you? And comment on your personal views of and values of the use of social media as a resource for school counselors. We're in that dilemma where technology is fantastic for us. During COVID, I absolutely loved everything virtual. Many of the things I did not go back to face to face. I still do a lot of things virtual as a school counselor, but we have a lot of firewalls and we have a lot of people getting in and we can't keep things private. So we're limited to the software that we can use. So we're being, that's constantly being used. So you have to follow your district policies as far as those things are concerned. Your second assignment is your personal and professional views on the LGBTQAI. As you can tell, they haven't fixed that yet. Issues. So we're going to, there's 3 videos that you will watch. And I think they're all about 1 hour long. So give yourself ample time to watch those videos. And then you're going to consider your views on the LGBTQAI plus population and your personal biases, beliefs about sexual orientation, human costs to transgender students, and the impact on school campuses, policies, and confidentiality. So you're going to, what new learning or changes have occurred for you after watching these videos? How do you reconcile personal, religious, professional values as a future counselor in dealing with these issues? Include at least one idea from the video to reflect on your narrative and how it impacts on school counselors, and comment on if these issues are currently prevalent and being dealt with at the school where you are working. And for those of you who aren't working at a school, just pick maybe, because you're parents, so pick maybe what you know in your community. So, and I think one person said that their husband, Leah, you said your husband works at it, so you can use his school. Feel free to do that. Okay. Your third assignment is your historically underserved population. Now, this is the one where you're going to create a presentation and you're going to present during week 5's class, our live session. So during our live session, so I need you to stick to 4 to 5 minutes because there's 16 of us, and we need to make sure that everybody has ample time to be able to present on their historically underserved population. About 10 slides is all you need. Okay, you're going to answer the questions, the 4 questions, and that should amount to about 10 slides, no more than 10. And you are going to present on 2 laws relating to your students of your chosen group, and you're going to briefly describe current issues and or challenges that are faced by that group of students that are historically underserved. Describe 2 mental health related and or educationally related laws which are still in effect today, which may impact today's students in this chosen historically underserved group. And how do these laws affect the students' mental health or educational functioning? And how would you apply those laws as a school counselor? So you will have your citations, and your last page of your PowerPoint will be your reference page. So make sure to include that. And then you'll upload your PowerPoint presentation. But part of your part of your grade is presenting to the class. So ensure that you're here to present to the class. Now, if something comes up, we'll talk about that at that time. Text me, email me, and let me know. And then maybe we'll come up with a solution for you for your presentation. Okay, because things do happen. All right. So that's week 5. And I haven't gone back to work yet, but perhaps some of you guys have already returned to work. And so something's already on the schedule for week 5. So just kind of pay attention to that, because you do need to present. All right. All right. Assignment number 4 is freedom of expression. So in this assignment, I want you to focus only on high school. Okay. So all of us that have more familiarity with the middle and the elementary, I want us to think about what it's like on a high school campus for this particular assignment. So we are, what does it say? And we're going to use Ed code. Ed code. What does it say in Ed code? So write that down, because that doesn't say that there. And we follow Ed code. So what does Ed code say about verbal speech on campus, written assignments on campus, clothing on campus, off campus texting, and social media posts? Okay. So what does Ed code? Because those are the laws that will follow. And then you might have some district policies. Each district may have implemented a specific district policy for technology, for social media, and etc. Okay, so again, we're looking at our high school students. Then we're going to write a 2 to 3 page paper discussing the students' rights. So if you got this paper, what would you do with it? Who would you turn it into? And mention the law. And in the description, discuss one difficulty or challenge involving in the 4 chosen laws as it relates to a school counselor. And please also include specific strategies you would use, okay, to maintain compliance with these laws, right? And our final assignment. I'm going to go into more detail about our final assignment and how to find the actual court cases, all right? So in our book has several court cases. Unfortunately, you can't use any of them for this particular assignment. So they don't want you quoting those. I will give you a list of other court cases that you can use those. Okay. So that'll give you a start. But in this assignment, you're going to find 3 court cases, right? And you're going to that cover a major theme that is in our textbook. And each chapter is a major theme. Okay. Professionalism, code of conduct, standard of care. We're going to go into more of that in just a minute, but those are the different themes. And you're going to find court cases where someone violated that, right? I don't want to go too far back. So we're going to stay in the 2000s, right? And then you're going to analyze these relevant court cases from literature reviews. So you'll see more text and literature reviews about what it says about standard of care, confidentiality, etc. So you're going to include some literature reviews on those topics as well. And then you're going to research the court cases. You can use the CUI library. I'll show you how to do that in one of our classes. And then you're going to write your paper. Now, you're going to write your paper with each part that's on that section. So your abstract, your paper, your purpose, your problem and belief, your analysis. And your analysis, it's not, you're talking about the likes and differences, I mean the similarities and differences of the court cases, right? That's when you're doing the analysis, not this case said this, not a summary. Okay, this case said this, and this was the outcome. Okay, it's more like, well, in this case, the counselor wasn't found um, in guilty for the act because X, Y, or Z. So you're analyzing it, and then when you're comparing all three court cases and their similarities and differences, and quoting and citing from those literature reviews, right? What does it say about the standard of care, and why do you think, and so on and so forth. Then you're going to go to your findings. And in your findings, that's where you say, as a result of that, this court case, the counselor was dismissed or the counselor was absolved, and that's where you're going to be looking at that, right? And you might be talking as a whole because it might have been a group of them. It might have been the counselor, the admin, the district. It might have been everybody. So maybe somebody got had to stayed in the court in the case, and then there was findings against that particular person, maybe the admin, maybe the district, it depends. But so you're going to put the findings in that section. Then the reflection is describing how these court cases had an impact on you. And then your conclusion, which is your new learning. Now, this is your 4 to 5 page paper, and this is the one that is your signature assignment. So you can get all the way through, have an A in the course, and if you don't do this paper, then you don't pass the course. So this is a really, really important paper, okay? And you can start right away. So start collecting your information right away so you can find your court cases. So kind of figure out, according to the chapters, what sounds interesting to you? Confidentiality, standard of care, neglect, what sounds interesting to you? And then try to start looking for some of those court cases that follow those themes. Okay? Any questions about the 5 assignments?
So all the assignments will be open already to us, for us. We can just go in, or just the final assignment is open to us.
Everything's open.
Okay, thank you.
Everything's open now. And if you see or notice that I accidentally didn't open something, then just let me know so I can erase that. Because all I did was put due dates in so that you would get messages on your board that, oh, this assignment is due this week. That's all I did for your discussion boards and for your assignments. I didn't put an end date for those. So they stay open. And the reason for that is, if something comes up and we have an agreement, I need you to be able to access it. Okay? All right. Any questions or concerns about the assignment so far? All right. Great. All right. So your first assignment is due week 2. This week, as I put in our announcements for week 1, you already had your discussion board. It's due tonight. So you have one discussion board that's due tonight, and then you have all your discussion boards. You respond to your peers on Sunday, like all of your previous courses. Okay? All right. So what are we talking about? All right. All right, so school counseling principles of ethics and law. So this, the ethical standards was revised in 2022, And the document um, specifies the obligation to the principles of ethical behavior necessary to maintain the high standards of integrity, leadership, and professionalism. It serves as a guide for all ethical practices for all individuals serving in school counseling capacity, and it provides support, direction for all self-assessment. So basically, this is our legal document that helps us understand how most counselors would operate in a legal or ethical issue. And this is our guideline so that everyone is able to say, okay, if I was put in that particular situation, then this is what I would do based on our standards. Okay. And so when there is a legal situation and someone sues, because we'll find out that people sue for all reasons, right? And we can immediately be in a case in a second, and you can be named in that case, and then you don't even remember. Sometimes the cases take forever to come up, and it's 7 years later, 8 years later, and you don't even remember the students. So that's another reason for you to keep good notes and make sure you did everything that you were supposed to have done at that time. So ethics are ambiguous and contextual by nature. They're seldom black and white, and there is no right answer. And so it can be very frustrating. So it's also good to collaborate. So if you have, and it's better to collaborate with someone on your same level. Admin and other people see things different. They're managers. And so as school counselors, we have different ethical codes. And sometimes they don't understand our ethical codes as an administrator. Now, some of our administrators do have their counseling credential and do kind of understand it, but many of them do not. And so they manage. And when they manage, they try to put out the fire. And we have to make sure we did everything before we put out the fire. Okay. And that what we need to make sure that when the problem is handled optimally. So this is really important. That helps us to be able to say that we did everything that we possibly could and that we followed all of our ethical standards and decision making. So this is in our book, and Dr. Stone talks about complications working with minors, and that's her acronym for it. Counselors' values. We can't leave our values at the door. We have to examine our ethical biases and then proceed thereafter. Okay, because we come with biases, and now we have to figure out, okay, now that I have this bias, what do I do with it? And then how do I proceed to make sure that I'm following the guidelines? Obligations beyond the student. We need to respect the student's confidence and balance the minor's rights with the parents, guardians' rights. Most of our children are under their parents' rights unless they are emancipated. So, and there are, of course, there's those legal situations where they have other guardians and other people in charge of them. Sometimes DCFS is in charge of them. So we have to make sure that we're communicating with the appropriate guardians. Minors' development and chronological levels. The minors' competency and development levels cannot be attached to their chronological age. As we all are aware, just because you're 13 doesn't mean that miraculously you have all this knowledge and your wisdom because you're 13 and you are entering into teenhood. Sometimes our 13-year-olds, due to trauma and other things, they're still at a 5-year-old age or a 4-year-old age. So we have to take that into consideration as well. Privacy of and rights of minors, that the parent and guardian have the legal rights with exceptions, limited exceptions. And we talked about that a little bit already. The legal status of minors, all minors, unless they're emancipated, share the legal characteristics that they are unable to make decisions on their own behalf. Okay, so we are there to help guide their decision-making process and then make the decisions for them if it's a legal one. In loco parenti, That is at times the school personnel acts in place of the parent. That happens a lot in illnesses in my community. We have a lot of parents that work, they're unable to get to the children when the children are ill. And then some parents tend to think that um, oh, the fever isn't that high or something like that. But once the fever gets to 104, we have to call the ambulance. Otherwise, you are um, not providing them the appropriate care that they need. You can't wait. You can be putting on ice. You can be trying to wait for the parent, but if you can't get that temp down past 104, you've got to call the ambulance. Okay. So those are things that we have to consider, and we just have to make that call. Community and institutional standards, that it's the school counselor's responsibility to keep in mind how historical factors into the lives of their students. Okay, so what does the history say? What does the community say about the area? And how did they act in certain ways? And then academic instruction. Parents send their kids for academic instruction, not for individual counseling. So we have to make sure that we have informed consent, which is on there next, when we are providing that type of counseling service. It's an additional service that we have the opportunities to provide, but that's not the reason why they send their children to school. Trusting relationship. Trust is the essential component for helping the relationships and developing a helping relationship. Informed consent, that we are responsible for making sure that we inform students about the purpose, goals, techniques, and rules of procedure under which the students will be receiving counseling if the parent has agreed to the counseling. And then the laws and ethical codes, a tolerance for ambiguity is a good essential skill to develop, because it's not straightforward. So we have to make sure that we are doing what the majority of people in our profession would do in making that decision. And then the number of students, clients ratio, the national average was 424 to 1 for the 2019 and 2020 school year, which is remarkable, because when I started into the early 2000s, we were at 800. So it is slowly decreasing, and that is fantastic. And standard of care, which is defined as what the reasonable, competent professional would do in similar circumstances. So that's the one to highlight. Okay. So here's 5 moral principles for ethical decision making. Autonomy, which refers to promoting students' ability to choose on their own. Direction. Benefits, which refers to promoting good for others. Justice or fairness, which refers to providing equal treatment to all people. And loyalty or fidelity, which refers to staying connected with your students and being able to being available to them to the extent possible. So when we have an ethical dilemma, here's some things that we can think about so that we can figure out what's the proper solution to this particular dilemma. How do your emotions define these problems? Your initial reaction? What does your heart tell you should happen in this case? I always tell my families, and my coworkers, because we have a lot of divorce happening and people take sides. And when that happens, your heart goes, because it goes based on your experiences, which is a very normal reaction. But we have to stay in our regular ethical standards so that we aren't siding, because sometimes when we side and we hear things, we make judgments. So we want to make sure that we are giving everybody due process and everybody equal opportunity, and to ensure that we're not leaving anyone out. I feel like I have become a court person reading all these different divorce cases and trying to figure out who has rights and who doesn't have rights and when this person can come and when that person can't come because we are liable if we have the child and release the child to someone at the wrong time. um how does your intellect define the problem unemotionally, objectively? What are the facts? Separate the hearsay, but the rumors often are informing. So making sure that sometimes the rumors are true. So you got to kind of match, don't throw out the rumors. Sometimes your yard supervisors, your security officers, they have more information because they see who's picking up, when they're picking up, how they're picking up, and they have all the information. So sometimes you just, you want to say, wait a minute, do I have the right person? And a lot of times I have to tell that to my teachers because the teachers believe, they'll see a person and think that they're speaking to the parent, the mother or the father. It could be the uncle, it could be the grandmother, it could be anybody. And a lot of times they just kind of see a live body, they want to get their paperwork done, and then they say things that they should not say. And then Ms. Bubble has to clean it up. So it's important to acknowledge our first reaction to the problem. When a student needs to come through when a student comes through the door crying and in pain, and our initial general reaction is, what can I do to help this student? Our emotional reaction has to be supportive, but we need to make sure that we have all the facts, and that we aren't too emotional with them and just automatically make up things in our head. We need to identify potential cultural, religious, and worldview factors and power dynamics that are present within potential ethical dilemmas. So that's super important too. We need to apply our ASCA ethical standards for school counselors and the relevant district policies and procedures. We need to consult with our appropriate professionals, our supervisors, other personal professionals, our school counseling peers. We need to consider the chronological and developmental levels of the student, consider our parent and guardian and students' rights, apply the moral principle, determine your potential course of action to their consequence, implement the course of action, analyze the outcome, and then identify any inconsistencies in the school district's policy for potential revision. And this is something that we're always constantly doing. When I started, we didn't have a suicide prevention policy. Every school district has one now. It's the law. So when I started, that was not prevalent. So now this policy exists, and you have to know it to the T, and that it is a district policy. It is not something that's written from the state. So you need to know what are the steps that you have to take when that occurs and how that occurs on your campus and throughout your district. And then you need to, and it's written out somewhere. So that's really important because if you miss a step, you can be liable. And especially if they're injured in some sort of way. Okay, chapter 2 talks a lot about professionalism, and I just kind of highlighted that it's not easily defined. Professionals have special skills and competencies. That's where our whole credential comes from. It highlights all of our competencies and what we're able to do based on our educational experiences. And that these principles clarify the ethical responsibilities for the entire school counseling professional. When you are an ASCA member, you have $1 million liability help for in any type of legal situation. All right, so take a look at this and tell me your thoughts. All right, so what would you do? Okay, professional boundaries and dual relationships. This is one of the themes. So if this one kind of sticks out for you, then this is one of the themes that we'll be discussing throughout the course. You love being a school counselor, especially for a selected group of students you described as being bright, engaging, and accomplished. This group receives most of your time and attention. You attend selected students' piano rehearsals, tennis tournaments, soccer games. You treat these students as your adult friends, encourage them to call you by your first name, giving them your home phone number, your home email address. You go out of your way to be extraordinarily responsive to their parents, and you encourage their praise, gifts, invitation, and personal favors. One parent, who is an attorney, helped you with your house closing without charging you. Are you behaving ethically and legally? Jump in. What are your thoughts?
No, they're not behaving the
Okay.
right way. They're not doing their
Why?
job as a counselor by treating everybody the same and being objective and um, like using your time and resources in the same way for all of the students.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I was thinking that like if a teacher did this, like absolutely not, right? They would be fired immediately because that's so inappropriate to have students have like your personal information and having those relationships with parents and things like that. So I would assume that the same would apply to a school counselor.
Okay. What about going to these piano recitals and tennis tournaments as a teacher? Your
I
thoughts?
Unless it's on school property as a school sponsored event, then no.
Can you get permission from the parents to attend?
These are great thoughts. We're gonna answer these. I jump in. What are your thoughts? Jump in. Because this is really common. This is how you build trust, right? So that's why it's called dual relationships, because it's a fine line. Because it's also something that, okay, what if you have a student who is not engaged and doesn't have people encouraging them and they need support, and you show up to one of these things. And now you've opened up the door. And now you're starting to feel like, okay, I'm reaching this student.
Yeah, I think one of the
I,
problems is you'll see, I especially work in the high school level, kids will push and push and push you because they're so lonely, so desperate, so begging for attention. And your job is to push back. I think I see it every day where I work. I see a lot of kids who push boundaries where I work.
Okay.
I
And then
have
I have the babies, and the babies will say, I'm turning 5. I want you to come.
oh.
Yeah, and
What do
I
you
have
tell
the
them
in
now?
my
toddlers,
in
and
my
they do the
case,
same thing. Like they just like I'm like the mom on campus, so so then they'll, like Mrs. Allen, can you come to my, extracurricular activity that doesn't have anything to do with the school district? So
Exactly.
my response is, and of course I'm not a school counselor now, but as a teacher, I'm like, well, does your parents know that you're inviting, people to, these events and things like that? So I've never attended any, but yeah, I am offered to join families outside of school all the time.
Okay. Claudia?
in my job, I have learned, and then, like I said, I do with the EL department. So a lot of them are new to the country, and they have, different, they're totally different school ethics and stuff. So that's where it comes. The other part is also where it's similar but not the same. Where, for example, they do the the EL department for those kids that have been less than 4 years that are graduating. And of course, with the permission or so, but we are supposed to provide that resource to where we provide that transportation from our school site to take them and so forth. And I have bought food for the kids myself with all my staff knowing that director and stuff. But those are like, again, resources that you're supposed to provide and do for kids and blah, blah, So, and of course, with their parents or guardians, a lot of our students are mostly with guardians because they come with cousins and stay with aunts and so forth from, Mexico, Guatemala, and so forth. So I think to me, it's like a lot of things that, go with it, but at the same time don't. So I
So
think
we have to look at our district
yeah,
policies. I think that's something that's super important because Claudia is mentioning that you're supposed to. I don't
yeah.
think it's written
We're
down,
not
Claudia.
supposed to, you're right. Not
No,
supposed to, but we should provide. For example, they say if your students can make it, they don't have transportation, make sure you guys provide with the school, get the van. If not, do you have transportation for them and stuff like that? That's what the district with our EL department does or wants to
right.
do. Yeah.
So let me tell you what happened in my district
Okay.
with the van. Okay.
Oh.
So we could all rent the van. Anybody could rent the van. All you had to do, like if you were the coach or something, you could rent the van and take the team. This was back in the day. You could take the team to uh, a competition or anything like that. That, especially the van, if it had, I took the cheerleaders to different competitions, in middle school. I just drove the van. Well, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to someone else who was driving the van and they got in an accident. And then when you get in an accident and someone gets injured, whoo,
Yeah.
whose insurance are we using?
Yeah.
Yours? The
Mm-hmm.
district's?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So see, that's why they said no more.
Mm.
Because so now the district had to put a policy in saying this is what happens. And no one can use that. So now our policy, our district policy is no one transports a kid except an administrator.
Oh, wow. Okay. They
Mhm.
haven't put that policy in our district yet.
It
But
might be there, Claudia, and you don't know about it. I'm telling you,
well,
sometimes it doesn't come all the way down. Miss Bubba's really nosy, so
yeah.
she
No, I
goes
like
and
that
finds
because
out.
that's special information. The other thing that you mentioned, like right now, for example, for the ELAC, the district ones, of course, is to provide support and trying to get, outreach, right? They even say like if we need to let us know. So the secretaries, for example, me and each site has one, can book the van. So, you guys meet at the school and then we'll take them to the district and then back. So, it's like you said, I mean, it's something
We have van drivers for that. So we have designated
we,
people. We have a bus driver, we have
yeah.
van drivers now, and all of that
Oh,
came out of the fact that you have to designate, I mean, with this situation because
yeah.
the accident wasn't the driver's fault.
Mm-hmm.
The accident was the fault of the other person, but you still are responsible for the injuries of the
Yeah.
children in the car.
Right.
So that's where, and these things will happen consistently. Like I said, this wasn't part of our process in the early 2000s. But now, because of it, we had to create a policy or
The
procedure.
only thing that they do have, as far as I know, is that, for example, me to drive, not anybody can drive. You must have a clearance of driving and, submit your DMV report and so forth to them to be able to have a clearance. That's the only thing I do know that I had to do in order for me to drive the vans or
Okay.
like
Well, see, I think what they
the
have is
school
a
van.
policy, and I
Mhm.
think they have a blanket policy now that only
Mhm.
covers admin. So those are
Oh,
the only people that transport. Yeah.
I will
Mhm.
mention it in my next meeting for
No, you
sure.
don't have to mention. I'm just letting you know,
Be like,
there's
wait,
just
are
the
we clear?
development of things. That's
Yeah.
it.
Like I'm
You
asking,
just
are
aren't
we
there
clear?
yet.
Thank you.
So these are the things to consider in that situation. School counselors work diligently to avoid the dual relationship. So popping at someone's basketball game and sitting in the stands and just kind of waving down and then leaving, attending one or two events, I don't think will get you in a lot of trouble. If you come to every single game, every single party, then people will have record that you were there, and so that starts to lean in that direction of, but if you're trying to build trust, coming to something outside of the school once or twice while you're building this trust, kind of is okay, but they don't want you to. Now, you can't be at the game or the function, give them your email address, give them your home address. You're picking them up from here, you're dropping them off there. Now, that's too much, okay? Because that's creating more of a relationship. We have to continually examine our actions. Whose needs are being met by my behaviors? If the answer is only a selected few students in my charge, or I'm feeding my own personal needs by my behavior, then the school counselor is in the throes of a serious ethical violation. School counselors, more than other groups of educators, have responsibility to ensure the emotional safety of the student. So it's also how the student perceives it. If the student is feeling a certain type of way, they may feel like if you feel that they are liking you more or wanting to spend more time with you, maybe they're misunderstanding the relationship. You're there for support, but they see it differently. So that's another thing to consider. Um, it's strongly recognized and respected tenet in the profession that the school counselor should avoid these dual relationship. And equity means you might accept an invitation to attend a special event or show for support for a student who needs to know someone cares, but singling out few on whom to lavish attention to is the demise of the large majority and is a quite different scenario. Okay. All right. Let's read this one. Standards of care. Here's another topic. Rainey did not have an ethical course in her school counseling master's degree program and is facing a tough situation in which a parent is suing Rainey at the school district because the parent believes that Rainey acted illegally. Rainey is not worried. She knows she's covered by this vicarious liability as the school district and that the deep pockets will be the one who sued. She believes that her standard of care is intact and it was not her fault. She didn't have the proper training in her master's degree program. Is Rainey correct in her assumptions? So she's saying, I didn't get the class. I'm not responsible.
It says in the text that even if like you're not a member of ASCA or even if you don't like do anything, like you still have to have like uphold these standards. So even if she's saying, "Oh, I didn't know," that's not an excuse because she should have sought out that information.
Excellent. Anybody else? Okay, so that's exactly it. Okay, although she didn't take the course as part of her master's, the deficiency will not protect her. Our profession expects school counselors to continue their studies. So the ethical standards clearly states that the school counselor engage in routine, content, applicable professional development to stay up to date on trends and the needs of students and other stakeholders and regularly attend training on current legal and ethical responsibilities. Okay. Furthermore, the ASCA standards for school counseling preparation program states candidates demonstrate ethical and culturally responsive behavior, maintain the highest standards of professionalism and legal obligation, and use consultation and ongoing critical reflection to prevent ethical lapses. This is standard 7. And this requirement to continue our professional development is reinforced every time you renew your credential. After every 5 years, it's going to ask you, have you done professional development? And this is part of it. Have you done your professional development in your areas to ensure that you are up to date on the most up-to-date information? This ethical standard is our ethical standards are reviewed every 7 years, I think. So we're going to get another one in 29. So they're constantly reviewing them. Okay. All right. Okay. So now I am going to show you the video and the process of how, and we won't get through all of it. I'll show you like the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes of process of how the ethical standards were renewed in 2022.
Standards, but to break it down and make it easier, we did have everybody assigned to a section. So the ethics committee began meeting about 2 to 4 times a week for approximately 4 weeks from the time that those suggestions came back until February 10th of 2022. And we met to reduce the redundancy in the suggested changes, to smooth out transitions. We also met with the diversity, equity, and inclusion and position statement committees to get their feedback on changes as well. Both of those committees took a really close look at the changes, and they added some language and some suggestions. And then once all of those changes were put into a readable document, the whole document was sent out for public comment. If I remember right, I think it was in April. And then once the public comment period ended, the committee met again and incorporated public comment. There was some really good feedback that came out of the public comment period, and that was also incorporated into the revised standards. And they were adopted officially on July 1 of 2022.
So any of you that have ever participated in a webinar or a session with Carolyn Stone, you have probably heard these terms. And we want to take a minute to just really remember that although this document is newly updated, we've included a lot of feedback throughout the process. Codes are not exhaustive. If we think about our ethical standards, they're aspirational. It's what we aspire to be and aspire to do, but rooted in the reality of we have some confines and some restrictions in our own buildings. Sometimes we have laws that often or sometimes collide with our ethical standards. And so it's not that these are prescriptive of if this, then this. It's important for us to remember that this is an aspirational set of standards that we follow and that we look to when making some decisions as we work with students and work with stakeholders in our buildings. And the reason why we do update these on a regular basis is because our code needs to be reflective of what's happening in society. And we know that there's a lot of things happening right now. And so it's important for us to make sure that that languaging, that inclusion, and all of those pieces are reflected within our ethical standards for the profession.
So over the course of this presentation, we're going to dig into each section that was changed to give you an overview of the specific changes that were made, but just to give you a general overview of the major changes as a whole. Really, there were changes in wording. So words were changed to be more action-oriented. As Dr. Wyckoff mentioned, it's really looking, again, at the changes in society. So a lot of addition of inclusive language, emphasis on safe school environment, ensuring equity, and you'll see that as we talk about some of the specifics, that's really incorporated more throughout in the new 2022 standards. And then again, incorporating the Ask a National Model language of the 4th edition. So in overall, some standards became bigger and were expanded. Other standards became smaller and were made a little bit more concise. Also, some of the order of the standards were changed just to create a better flow as they really read through. I think that's what the committee and all the states did a really nice job, the representatives, of really looking at everything holistically, looking at wording as well as flow. So really trying to make it the best that it can be at this point. And then in general, 2 standards were eliminated from the previous standards. So the previous 2016 standards had A.2.H, which really dealt with HIV, AIDS, and reporting communicable diseases to a third party who might be at risk of contracting a disease. And this was really eliminated because in the midst of COVID, it was confusing and it was really too prescriptive following the COVID-19 pandemic. And also with the recognition that we do have the section related to the duty to warn, which is already covered. So really felt like that specific standard wasn't needed at this point. And again, in the midst of the pandemic, it was really too prescriptive. And then we also, or the committee also eliminated the previous DK standard. And that one really had to do with school counselors who were site supervisors of internship students using evaluation tools when supervising those students, and the selection of appropriate evaluation tools. And really that was eliminated because there's a recognition that universities typically provide site supervisors with the evaluation tools that they're required or asked to use. So school counselors aren't typically selecting those evaluation tools on their own. They're given to them by the university they're partnering with. So really recognizing that wasn't needed, so that one was eliminated as well. So those were the two standards that were fully eliminated from the 2016 standards. And then in total, 34 new standards were added, which we'll talk about over the course of this presentation.
So in the preamble and the purpose, which is the very start of our ethical standards, there were changes to the wording and some language updates, and specifically the sentence about school counselors having unique qualifications and skills was moved out of the first paragraph and right to the very top of the second paragraph, just because it flowed a little bit better. But also the wording was changed up a little bit to say that they have the skills to implement a comprehensive school counseling program that addresses pre-K through 12 students' academic, career, and social and emotional development needs. In the preamble and purpose section, there were overall language updates focusing on the importance of a physically and emotionally safe environment that's inclusive, that's healthy, and making sure that school counselors recognize our duty to make sure students are getting equitable access to a school counseling program, and supporting students from all backgrounds, from diverse backgrounds. So those were the main changes in our preamble and purpose section.
So I'm going to give you a general overview of Section A. Section A is quite lengthy, where quite a bit of our ethical standards sit in our, and especially as it relates to confidentiality and some other pieces. So Section A will go on a little bit. So we put an overview here. Again, like Wendy just said, there's a greater emphasis on equity, and that creating and sustaining the safe and inclusive environments. So that it's making sure that it talks about our actions and our role in doing that as school counselors. Some pieces about making sure that we are addressing personal biases and receiving training that's relevant to culturally sustaining practices. And that was a lot of feedback that came from our DEI committee as well. We changed language, I think, and Jamie talked about this throughout, from like the intention, but we're increasing that person first language instead of that deficit language. Standards that are mentioned there were specifically addressed from lessons that we all learned as a profession from COVID, and helping us just make sure that our standards are applicable to maybe any other pandemics that we may face in the future. There were two sections that were renamed. So A5 used to be dual relationships section, and now and managing boundaries, and that has a different name now, and we'll go through that in a minute. And then A11 was bullying, harassment, and child abuse all lumped into one section, and we recognize that those things don't fit together, and so those two sections specifically had a major overhaul, which is where some of those 34 new standards really fell in line. So just to start at the top of A, and if you have your standards, the new standards, you can access them on ASCA's website. If you have them to kind of follow along, it may make this seem a little bit less confusing. But so again, some of it is just wording, and some of it is actually new standards that are added. So as you see here, A1B, that we added this piece about fostering and affirming all students and their identity and psychosocial development. So this is not only talking about just gender identity, but just all students fostering their identity and that full psychosocial development. We thought that was incredibly important. A2P was also a brand new standard. in advocating for physical and virtual workspaces. Again, this came directly from lessons learned during COVID that are arranged to protect the confidentiality of students' communications and records. We learned that during that time, some of that confidentiality was hard, especially as we're transmitting things via the internet. And so that was a new standard. In A3, which deals with comprehensive school counseling programs, we reordered those standards in that section. So it's not that there's brand new standards there, but it was reordered to help school counselors really understand how to build that comprehensive school counseling program and what our responsibilities are in that realm. And then A4, there are two new standards here. One is addressing personal bias related to students' post-secondary choices and recognizing that, that a four-year college is not the only option for students and likely is not necessarily the best option for all students, and that we need to make sure that we aren't projecting that bias on students as we're helping them with their college and career planning for post-secondary. And then also in the same vein, addressing any inequitable systemic policies and practices related to students' post-secondary choices. So this could be if your school building has academies or things of that nature, and if there are GPAs or certain tracking things that are keeping students either out of or thrusting them one way or the other, really addressing those and how that's part of our role as school counselors is to look at those from a systemic lens and really talk about how those policies are impacting students negatively. More in so A5 is one that used to be called the dual relationships piece, and some great feedback came in regarding this section, and so that section has been renamed Sustaining Healthy Relationships and Managing Boundaries. And I think we had some great conversation as a committee in this section and recognizing that dual relationships happen, and in some places dual relationships are necessary in order to make connections with families and students. So things like attending graduation parties or attending specific events might be necessary in order to gain trust of some of our families. And the way it was written in our old standards, and again, standards aren't prescriptive, but the way that it was written in our old standards, it almost made it seem like that was a no-no. And so in this section, we added 4 new standards to just help us kind of think through when those dual relationships happen, how to navigate it and make sure that it's a healthy relationship, and how we manage those boundaries. So that section is pretty extensively reworked. In group work, we added 3 new standards there. We want to talk about culturally sustaining group counseling services. So that was consistent language throughout the document, the idea of culturally sustaining. Also, equitable access to participation and removing obstacles to participation in groups. And so we're making sure all students have access and not just some students. And then topic selection. And we had quite an extensive conversation around this one as well. And just realizing that there are topics that are probably not best suited for groups in schools, topics that could stir up a lot of emotion, that would be hard for a student to pack back together and head back to the classroom, but also a place where we as school counselors might not have the expertise and might be kind of out of our scope. And so that piece was added. And then in A8, student peer support programs, there were 3 new standards added there. And again, the bulk of that was around equitable access, representation, making sure that if we have peer support programs, that those that are part of those peer support programs are representative of our whole student population, that it's not just a certain group of students that get to be part of those programs. And making sure that if we have those programs, that we're sharing the goal of those programs with our stakeholders, whether it's parents, community members, principals, teachers.
Haley, did you want to speak at all to A5J about the conflict of interest?
Sorry,
standard?
I kind of skipped over that one. We in that section we just talked about as school counselors, we know that we have some power and we have some privilege when we're working with families because we're seen as, I don't want to say authority figures, but we are seen as important. And so just being aware of self-promotion, whether it is if you have private practice in the community or whether you have some sort of side connections, side businesses, that you would want to make sure that there isn't some sort of conflict of interest when you're engaging in those healthy relationships with families.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So A9 is one that comes up a lot in our frequently asked questions in talking about and thinking about when we work with students who may be thinking of suicide and how to approach that. So it's a really important new language that was incorporated into A9B specifically. And unfortunately, there are some districts that require their counselors to use a specific risk assessment tool. The previous standard kind of spoke a little bit to the selection of a tool. We want to get away from that. We focus more on how it is almost impossible to accurately quantify a level of suicide risk. And this is really important, and a lot of research bears this out. So we want to move away from telling people that their child is low, medium, or high risk. So in this standard, it was reworded and emphasized that the importance of recognizing that challenge in quantifying risk, and then if you are required to use some type of risk assessment, to understand that it is only an information gathering tool. It is only one piece of information in a process. And when we are reporting the results of that assessment to parents and guardians, that we never negate risk of the student's potential harm to themselves. And we always are going to report that risk to parents. So students may minimize risk to avoid scrutiny, and it's our imperative to let parents know that we've done an assessment, that there is some risk. It's to underscore the need for parents to act. It's not to report a judgment of risk level. So important new language in A9B.
So in another addition, kind of continuing with A9, a new standard that was added is the importance of providing culturally responsive mental health resources to parents or guardians throughout the process. As Dr. Rock was just talking about, that's an important step in providing student support and making sure that it's not just resources, but that they're culturally responsive and that school counselors are really intentional about the resources that they're providing. So moving on to section A10, section A10 was renamed to marginalized populations, which was previously titled underserved and at-risk populations. So really recognizing that marginalized populations would be a more appropriate term to encompass the information in that section. Two new standards were added, standard G and standard H. So G really talks about advocating for access and inclusion and opportunities for all students, such as AP classes, gifted, honors, dual enrollment classes. So really making sure that we're advocating for access for students individually. And then H really, again, talks at that systemic level of systemic change and looking at actively advocating for changes at the systemic larger level that is needed to ensure equitable participation for all students across courses and programs and things like that. So really looking at both levels that we're advocating for students, but we're also advocating for systemic change at that as well. And then section A11, as mentioned earlier, this was a pretty significantly readjusted. There was a lot of standards that were added, and it was a new section title. So as mentioned before, the child abuse section was separated out of this section because really we realized that it didn't fit very well. They really didn't go as well together. So that was separated into its own section. And then this section was retitled Bullying, Harassment, Discrimination, Bias, and Hate Incidents. Again, I think this section really showcases the responsiveness to societal changes that were happening, really trying to encompass equity, inclusion, and promoting safety for all students and belonging. So in all those changes and those additional standards that were added, one of them, the first one really talks about recognizing that bullying, harassment, discrimination, bias, hate incidents really can be rooted in race, gender, sexual orientation, students' intersectional identities, and recognizing that that is an important component of where some of those can come from. And then again, advocating at the systemic level of policies. So really ensuring that policies are created for all students to ensure that the school is a place of safety, belonging, and justice. Again, you hear that language throughout, justice and belonging. And then also recognizing another standard, and I think it's C, talks about, or it might be E, one of the additional ones that were added in, I think it might be E, but talks about recognizing that bias incidents don't just affect the student, and it's not just potentially traumatizing for the students involved, but that it really affects the school climate and culture as a whole. So it's important for school counselors to engage in active practices that support a positive school climate, that supports a sense of belonging. Again, looking at that systemic level, that's really an ethical responsibility of school counselors to support that at the large level in the school climate to ensure that's a place of safety. And then the last two additional standards that were added to this section really relate to prevention and response. So talking about prevention and response to bullying and harassment, discrimination incidents, and looking at collaborating with administrators, providing support, healing, recovery for students who are engaged in these incidents, and then just, again, actively responding, that response, that action is really important for school counselors to engage when those incidences occur. And then, as I mentioned, the child abuse section is now its own section in A12. So not too much was changed in that section in terms of the content, but just some of the wording was changed. Really, it was rearranged a little bit. Wording was changes. One of the standards was separated out to be more concise and specific and easy to read, but it really covers many of the same topics that were in the 2016 standards. And then A15 is where technical and digital citizenship comes into play. I think, again, some lessons learned from a lot of school counselors who engaged in virtual school counseling during the COVID pandemic, and a lot of things that came up from frequently asked questions and what that looked like you can see kind of interwoven in this section as well. So 3 new standards were added to this section, and they really talked about challenges with confidentiality when using email. So really recognizing those challenges that are inherent in using email, that we can't guarantee confidentiality, and working to establish boundaries for responding to emails. So ensuring that students don't think we are available 24/7 if they have crisis situations, that they're not emailing their counselor at 1 in the morning, assuming that they're going to get a response. So really making sure those boundaries are set into place. Another edition really talked about advocating for virtual learning tools that include safeguards to protect student information. So again, kind of going back to that confidentiality in technology, making sure that students' information is protected in the tools that we're using. And then the third one really talks about advocating against alert tools requiring constant monitoring by school personnel. So we're seeing a lot of rise of software that, for example, sends automatic alerts to school personnel, maybe when students are on a computer, or if certain search terms are used in a computer, and it automatically sends alerts to school personnel such as school counselors, and really recognizing that those tools are not aligned with the nature and function of school counseling. Again, if they're sent to a school counselor at a certain time of day, or if they're not available, it just doesn't align well. So really advocating against the use of those software systems, those tools, which doesn't align well with our role. And then in A16, looking at virtual distance school counseling, there was one new standard that was added that really looked at the challenges of assisting students considering suicide when you're engaging in virtual school counseling. I think this came up a lot. There's a lot of questions that came up about this during the pandemic when a lot of school counselors were engaged in virtual school counseling of how do we handle these situations when students do express suicidal ideations. And so this really adds some information on that of recognizing the challenges of what that can be when you're working with a student virtually, thinking about identifying their physical location, keeping them on the call, locating their parents, getting help to their location. So that's what that standard is really talking about, is addressing suicidal or students at risk of suicide virtually.
So whereas Section A is all about the school counselor's responsibility to their students, and that is our primary client, is our students. Section B talks about the school counselor's responsibilities to parents and guardians, to the school, and to themselves. And so B1 talks about responsibilities to parents and guardians. There are 2 new standards that were added to this section. Overall, the language was updated to be more inclusive and culturally responsive. We do recognize that parents and guardians are the guiding voice in their children's lives, and it is imperative that we partner with parents and guardians for the benefit of their students. So one of the new standards is B1E, which talks about any time that a school counselor gives a survey, a universal screener, a needs assessment, the importance of not only following their school district policy and local, state, and federal law in administering those policies, but making sure to adhere to the Protection of People Rights Amendment when using these screeners, and informing parents or guardians prior to their use in accordance with the law. That's really important. Also, standard B1F talks about the importance of engaging our parents in our school counseling program, providing meaningful conversations, allowing them to contribute to our school counseling programs, and the importance of having diverse sample of parents and guardians that provide that voice. Section B2 is the responsibilities to school. Section B3 is the responsibilities to ourself. And throughout those sections, pretty much the standards were the same with just updates to the language, again, about a lot of equity and inclusion met in those standards.
We can't hear you.
I know. All right, you guys, that concludes our course for today. I can send you the PowerPoint to this so you can just have some notes as to the changes. I'll upload that and email that to you. And so have a good evening. If there's any other additional questions, feel free to contact me. I'll be on at 4 most of the time, but you can for if you need to meet with me prior to the class.
I'm sorry, you mean 6:00 p.m.
Right, but I'll be on at 4, anywhere from 4 to 5. That's like the office hours, in case you have questions or concerns and we need to meet, or you need to talk to me about something that we can't do via email or text. Just letting you know that's what the office hours are for, and that's on the week of our live sessions. Okay.
Awesome.
Professor
Thank you.
Bobo,
Thank
I
you.
have a question. It's in regards, you said there was a template and I forgot where you said it was.
In the writings resources for on your Canvas, it says the writing
Okay.
resources, and it says the APA template format. Okay.
Okay, got it. So we use that
Thank you.
template to submit with our assignment.
Absolutely.
Thank
With
you.
all your
All
assignments.
assignments or just that one?
All the assignments. Use the
Okay.
same template.
Okay.
That's what they're encouraging so that you don't lose your points. And that's going to be from all of your courses forward. So I know if you haven't used it, use it.
Okay.
Because they're instructing us. We just did our spring faculty meeting, and they're instructing us to take points off if you are not using it. So it's important that you use it. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye. Have a good
Bye-bye.
evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.